Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Artsbeat TV and radio here on Westfield Community Programming Channel 15, 89.5 FM WSKB, and also now on Southwick Community Programming. I'm your host, Mark Auerbach, and it's New Year's Eve and a chance for us to sit back and think about some of the high points and low points of 2021 as the arts community emerged from the pandemic with a new reality of sorts. And every year we do a recap at the end of the year of what's happened, some of the changes, some of the pivots, and all of that. And I'm always joined by my good pals, Chris Rohmann, who frequently writes the Stage Struck column for the Valley Advocate, who also directs in some of the area theaters, and he's a writer, and Fred Sokol, who writes for Talking Broadway and also does writing of his own as a playwright and a film screenplay writer. So, gentlemen, it's good to have you here. And as I think it was Stephen Sondheim who wrote in I'm Still Here, I made it all through all of last year and I'm here. So here we are as we end 2021 and go into 2022. Good morning.
And a big few all around.
Yeah. Good to see both of you.
You too, Mark. Hi, Fred.
Yeah. Good morning, Fred. You need to turn your volume on, Fred. But anyway, Chris, I can hear you. Let's start with some of the high points and low points of 2021. The pandemic. The pandemic really impacted every arts organization coast to coast. Most of them returned on some level or not. We lost the Bing Arts Center in the pandemic. They did not come back. And New Century Theater folded as a result of the pandemic, and everybody else came back with the exception of the Springfield Symphony Orchestra, which has been the big news story of late. There's been a labor dispute going on. They haven't performed since March of 2020, but the musicians on their own formed a nonprofit called MOSO and ended the year with a major concert with their music director Kevin Rhodes at Symphony Hall, and have been continuing to perform on their own despite the symphony's non-performance. That seems to be the big news in terms of arts organizations here in Western Mass, but there's been so much else. Chris, when you look back at the year, what are some of the major news stories in the arts that locally that had an impact on you?
Well, I guess the big news story is kind of what you just said, how theaters were so determined to come back after the missing year of 2020, so to speak, and the ways in which they did that. Early in the spring, theaters started coming back with outdoor performances because it still wasn't safe to go inside, and either the state or equity wouldn't allow them to. And then under tents, Chester Theater and Barrington Stage did Chester their entire season, and Barrington Stage a couple of performances under big tents outdoors. I saw a performance early in the spring that took place all over an orchard. It was a kind of environmental, immersive kind of piece, and it was done that way just because they had no other choice, but they wanted to put this show on. I was really impressed with the way theaters improvised and stuck to it to just get back on stage.
Yeah, and you mentioned Chester Theater. They moved all the way to Hancock Shaker Village, which is quite a distance to produce outdoors under a tent. And Goodspeed moved their summer season outdoors into their parking lot. But I think for me, the most interesting pivot, if you want to call it that, was TheaterWorks in Hartford that moved an entire production to the shores of the Connecticut River. They did a production of a new play called Walden uh, on the shores of the Connecticut River, bugs and all, in between where Amtrak ran and the actual water. And they designed a set to fit the woods and the fields there. They found an incredible way to create the sound so that everybody that attended could hear everything, and created a major theatrical impact that they probably never would have thought about doing had the pandemic not hit.
I thought that worked so well because the play takes place in a cabin in the woods. So they built a cabin on the water side and did the show with glass front of the downstairs rooms. And it really, I didn't get to see it live. I saw it on Zoom. Thank goodness that is still around, but thank goodness that's not the only thing that's still around. And that was very impressive.
The other thing that I found was going to Chester. I had never been to Hancock Shaker Village before, but the stage was on a platform. I guess it's a patio area that they use for receptions, and it was tented, and it's adjacent to a cow pasture. And the cows were incredibly interested in what was going on stage. And their opening show of the season was with James Barry, a solo performance called Title Indeed, and the cows started mooing and getting involved in the show, which added, James Barry's ability to ricochet when being upstaged by a cow was theater that I never expected I'd ever see.
Well, I'd like to say this. On the other hand, I never got to Williamstown because it kept raining every time I was supposed to go there. And they kept canceling and canceling. And finally, we gave up, which was depressing. And also, I was slated to and went to the opening night of King Lear at Shakespeare and Company to christen a new outdoor space, and it rained. 20 minutes into the first act, the entire production got moved into the Tina Packer Playhouse. And the actors picked up as if nothing had ever happened. So, I mean, talk about adaptation to circumstances. People were ready to do that. I mean, I was kind of late on board going to shows because frankly, I was just wary of hanging out indoors. And honestly, I am to this day, because of health situations. And even though theaters are correctly requiring people to be both vaccinated and masked, I still enter and I kind of feel like, is this really the right thing to do? Even though, and so that sticks in the back of my mind. I'm glad to be back, totally glad to be back. But
as back as we are, I carry my vaccination card. I got it laminated so I can carry it in my wallet.
Yeah,
and flash it every time I need to, and I do need to quite often, thank goodness.
Well,
the other thing about Shakespeare and Company that struck me was that they were required to do their shows outside, but they were only required to start them outside. This was equity rules. And if rain or heat got in the way, they were allowed to move indoors. And I thought that really got in the way of Deborah Ann Bird's solo show, Becoming Othello, which really needed an intimate kind of atmosphere because very confessional, very personal. And the performance that I saw in the afternoon got so hot that halfway through they moved inside, and she never really found the pace once she had to move from outside to inside, although it would have been so much better had she been able to do it indoors the whole time.
Yeah, I think that the audiences in general became very forgiving about little glitches and stuff because having streamed so much and watching so much Zoom theater, a technical glitch doesn't bother anyone anymore. But it was kind of a surprise when you sat outside at a theater performance. I saw one of the best shows of the year down at Goodspeed in their tent on the river. And Rashidra Scott, who's currently in the Broadway revival of Sondheim's Company, did a one-woman show called Ambassador of Love, and it was the life and times of Pearl Bailey. And she recreated Pearl Bailey's performances up through Hello Dolly, which kind of is the one thing that I remember from childhood of Pearl Bailey being big. And she was competing with the ferry boats and the barges and the sailboats on a Sunday afternoon, cruising up and down in the river with their boom boxes going and everything else. And it set the show in an environment where concentrating on a show was so important. But as I sat there, I realized how much I had missed live theater and being in and the interaction between what was happening on stage and being part of an audience. I was thrilled to go with it and really willing to pivot on a moment's notice to accept everything from mosquitoes to a thunderstorm.
Interesting, because as I said to Chris this morning via email, I have been thinking about us. I mean, we've been covering theater for like 40 years, give or take, each of us. And we've had a lot, we've had a lot of overlap, and we're friends and all that kind of thing. Well, during the pandemic, when I literally didn't go to a show for a very long time, I started to reevaluate. And as Mark alluded to, I'm being a novelist these days, largely. And so I said to myself, do I really want to go back? I mean, there was a time when I directed 45 college productions. I was seeing everything in Western Mass and pretty much everything in Connecticut. Well, I decided I want to step back, but I didn't want to step back and immerse myself as I did. But when I did go back, I said, wow, I really miss this stuff. I have to go back now because I forgot how much I love live performance. And so that I'm going to kind of modify a little bit, but there's no way I'm going to stop doing what I've been doing for all of these years. So that's my kind of quarter's worth of information regarding that. I don't know about how you guys feel.
Well, for me,
exactly. I feel
yeah.
Go ahead, Mark.
I was saying, I missed a good part of 2019. I was in an accident and was bedridden for 6 months and really missed a lot of theater. So I was jumping at the bit to go back and review, which I was able to do before the pandemic hit. And then I'm stuck at home again. And I realized almost instantly how much I missed going to shows, because my dream in learning to walk again was to go to a Broadway show. And a friend and I went to see Mac and Mabel in New York, and a week later, everything is shut down for the pandemic. So I was ready to go, but I also realized that the work that we do as theater reporters involves so much more than sitting in a play. We have to write about it. We have to drive to and from. And I've had to cut back on what I can cover just because I have a day job and other responsibilities. So I'm more discriminating, I might say, in what I choose to cover and for what venue I choose to cover. And that hasn't gone away in my world as restrictions have been lifted, but I appreciate the work that goes into putting on a show and appreciate the work that actors and musicians and designers do much more now than I ever did before the pandemic.
During 2020, I had some thoughts that maybe it's time to pack it in, this part of my life, that I'm not as young as you two are, or as I used to be. And because I couldn't go to the theater, I guess I lost the feeling that I get every time I walk into a theater. And I thought, well, it may be time. I've written for The Advocate for over 35 years. And so maybe it's time to stop. And then as soon as I had the opportunity to go to live theater, I went right back.
Yeah.
And what struck me is not only how I felt, but also audiences applauded when the artistic director came out on stage for the curtain speech and said, "Welcome back." And everybody cheered because they were so happy to be there.
So we're all very much in parallel lanes on this, which is what I would have surmised, but I had some real doubts as well. And, I cover a lot of Connecticut going south these days for Talking Broadway. So Yale Rep has yet to come back. And it is coming back in January. And I'm thinking I can't wait to walk into the theater again there. Whereas a year ago, I was thinking, that's a schlep. I'm driving down to New Haven all the time. And as Chris said, I was thinking like, maybe that's enough. I'm driving through snow. I'm driving through sleet. Maybe that's enough of this stuff. But now I'm thinking like, man, I really like going back there. I mean, remember that I started covering this when August Wilson was there all the time. Fugard was being performed all the time. Lee Blessing, they were doing incredible work. And, you know, the legacy and the joy and the honor I've had of covering that means that I will be there in January. So it's the same kind of a thing. I mean, maybe a little bit less often, but there nevertheless.
Well, the thing that worries me is, I mean, I'm cutting back in a lot of the work that I'm doing, and the 2022. I plan to spend my time doing radio and no print. I mean, I'm walking because for me, radio is my forte, and I get an opportunity to do a lot of in-depth things that one can't do in print. But I realize that when I look around at all of us covering shows, we're getting up there in years, and I want to see younger critics and younger reporters with a fresh point of view. And I also want to see, or hope to see, a more diverse group of arts reporters and criticism. We talk about equity and inclusion and diversity, which the theaters are, the arts organizations in general are trying to put out there in terms of hiring, more diverse staff and presenting more diverse voices on stage and things like that. But in arts criticism and arts reporting, that diversity doesn't exist, and it really should. And I hope that the next generation of arts reporters, that as we all retire, the next generation are more diverse than we are.
Indeed. That's the other thing that I really noticed this year, is that what I call the George Floyd effect. That last year theaters were closed down watching everything that was happening on the streets in this country, and finally recognized that many of the theaters in this region and across the country are just so white and so male, for that matter. And they've come back, many of them have come back with a new mission to bring in more people of color at every level, backstage and on stage. The production of Wilderness, Eugene O'Neill's play at Hartford Stage in the fall, was a really interesting experiment that I didn't think was entirely successful, because it's about Eugene O'Neill's childhood, pretty autobiographical, takes place in very white New London, Connecticut at the turn of the century. And it was cast with a very mixed cast, Black, Latinx, white, Asian. And we were expected to, I guess, either accept that that's what this neighborhood looked like back then, or just consider it, quote unquote, colorblind casting. And some of the performances were great, and some of the play really worked, but it seemed, well, it was very self-conscious because of what I just said. The theaters feel that they need to step out from their all-white canopy. So I was really proud that they did it, and I hope they'll keep it going in maybe a more believable way.
I found it kind of interesting. I mean, every theater, it seemed like every curtain speech was paying homage to the Native American tribes on whose land we're. I remember going to a Chester performance, and Daniel Kramer, the artistic director, acknowledged and thanked the ancestors of the land that Chester lives on today, and Hancock. But I found sometimes, like Barrington Stage's musical A Crossing, which received most of the Berkey Awards and is probably Broadway bound, tells the story of the Mexican immigrants crossing the border into Texas, and a series of immigrant stories, and certainly spoke to a group of voices and represented points of views that this whole equity, diversity, and inclusion would want a theater to bring forth to the stage. And it did it without banging the concept of equity, diversity, inclusion over the head. It just presented some really good theater that told a really good, strong story. And I was really pleased to see audiences of all ilks appreciating it for what it was and understanding what it had to say without theater preaching. And I hope that as the theater companies move forward and diversify in what they're doing, that they'll continue to do it in that format rather than saying to people, this is what you need to see. And that's my personal point of view.
I'd just like to respond to both of those performances, because in the case of Our Wilderness, I thought that play worked as well as it could. I mean, it's not O'Neill's best play. And so I thought they did what they could. I mean, I happen to be fortunate enough to see how many decades ago Jason Robards and Colin Dewhurst performed that at Yale Rep, and it was totally different, obviously so. And there was, from what, not a lot of colorblind casting then. So in terms of what that production was, and then as Mark said, A Crossing, I mean, I haven't been so moved in the theater as I was by that in quite a while. And what I tried to say in my review, which never made it into print, was that I was moved as much almost as being in the theater in New York when Rent moved uptown that first weekend, and the place was emotionally shaken. And I found the audience in Pittsfield similarly moved by A Crossing. I thought it was that good and that profound and that resonant. And I do hope that moves on to Broadway. I haven't heard anything about that.
The thing that surprised me about that production was that you would think that Barrington Stage, Julie Boyd, was saying, well, in this situation, in this time, we need to put on something diverse. But she told me that they'd been trying to put it on for 6 years. So, and they finally got it on almost coincidentally this year. And Barrington has been very good about cross-diverse casting, I think.
I agree. And so is TheaterWorks in Hartford. They presented playwrights of various ethnicities, and their casting is quite diverse. And between Barrington Stage and TheaterWorks, I think that we have a lot to be proud of that kind of theater and that kind of attention. And they have the pulse of the community, the larger community in mind.
Not to forget Shakespeare and Company, who really pioneered multicultural casting way back when.
Yes, and in terms of Shakespeare and Company and the age business that we were bringing up before, Tina left the artistic directorship some time ago. Julie Boyd is leaving in a year. Kate's younger than us again, but not all that youthful. I mean, in terms of literally numbers of age, although she is obviously a vibrant person. So, there is a kind of a turnover in the artistic directorship, and at Hartford Stage as well. I mean, I was very close both to Mark Lamos and Michael Wilson, and and now we have somebody new. Now we have somebody diverse there, which is good. It's a good thing. And so all of this kind of gets linked together. And in fact, Barrington Stage and TheaterWorks share a linkage, as if they're cousins. I know that Julie Boyd and Rob Ruggiero have talked with one another, not shared productions, but one has followed the other. So this is great, the camaraderie, really, I think.
And also, TheaterWorks, Rob Ruggiero directs frequently at Goodspeed. So there's a connection there.
Yes.
They have Goodspeed has new artistic staff. So there's been a lot of turnover. It seems for the good in some of the theaters. We only have a couple of minutes left. So, rather than saying what was the best of the year, because that's each one of us will have a completely different opinion on that. But is there one show that moved you or surprised you that you didn't expect that you're going to remember for a long time?
Go ahead, Fred.
Well, I talked about A Crossing, but the one I'm most surprised about is Shirley Valentine. I saw Shirley Valentine like a million years ago. And I kind of went for a few reasons. One, I was craving to go to a production. Two, I usually like Corinna May very much. Three, Eric Hill. But I went and I said, all of those things aside, I'm not so sure I really want to go to the show. And then I thought it was brilliantly done. And I thought, this is great because I'm so surprised and so enlightened. And I saw something rich. And I'll remember that particular performance of Shirley Valentine for a while. Chris?
Well, for me, it was Chester Bailey at Barrington Stage, which was written by and acted by white men, about a young man who's wounded in the war, not in action in the Second World War, who's in a hospital, and in order to not go mad, goes mad basically, does not allow himself to believe that he is so maimed. And father and son, Ephraim and Reed Birney, played it just beautifully. And the other thing that struck me about that production was that theaters came back and they didn't necessarily have a lot of money to spend on production values because they lost so much in the last year. And the sets and lights by Beowulf Boret and Peter Kozorowski in that show were so simple and so effective. They used the whole stage. The lighting showed us both the places and the moods of the scenes. So that was really top of my list this year.
And for me, it was A Crossing and Chester Theater's Tiny Beautiful Things, because there's something about the acting couple of James Barry and Tara Franklin on stage, and I've seen them in so many theatrical performances over the years. But it was just a thrilling night of theater and a nice play. But A Crossing blew me away. I mean, I sure hope it has a future. Gentlemen, we're out of time. I hope that we can get together before New Year's Eve of 2022 into 2023. But in the meantime, Happy New Year to both of you. And I can't wait to, one of the things I missed during the pandemic was seeing you guys across the aisle at various opening nights. So I'm looking forward to more of that in the new year.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark.
So we've been chatting with Fred Sokol and
Year.
Chris Rohmann. We're going to take a break to acknowledge our underwriters, so we'll be back with more Artsbeat. Peter Coles is our chief engineer. Don't go away.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by Westfield Bank. For more than 160 years, Westfield Bank has been an important community presence and commercial leader in the Pioneer Valley. With convenient full banking services in Westfield, West Springfield, East Longmeadow, Agawam, Feeding Hills, Springfield, Southwick, as well as Enfield and Granby, Connecticut, visit us on the web at westfieldbank.org.
Underwriting for Community Radio on WSKB is brought to you in part by Rockies. Over 30 convenient locations throughout Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Connecticut, and Florida. One of the nation's largest ACE dealers. Expertise and great product selection in paint, hardware, lawn and garden. That's Rockies, rock solid service since 1926. On the web at rockies.com. Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Dunkin' Donut Shops of Westfield and the Sardinia family. It's nice to know that even as the world changes, Dunkin' Coffee remains the same at 7 convenient locations throughout Westfield.
Listen to me, Michael Buster McMahon, Mondays 8 to 10 a.m. to learn the stories behind your favorite songs. Or don't. I'm not the boss of you.
Community Radio
89.5 WSKB. Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 at 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Welcome back to Artsbeat TV and radio, everyone. I'm your host, Mark Auerbach. Peter Coles is our chief engineer today. This is our last show of calendar year 2021. You probably will want to save it, and you can always go watch it again and again on YouTube, where it's archived at WSKB Community Radio. And while you're in those archives, you might want to go back to Valentine's Day of 2020, the last live show we did in the studio before the pandemic with the actors and directors, teachers and bakers, Tara Franklin and James Barry. And it's one of the most requested shows when people say, if you're going to do a rerun, could you run that show with Tara and James? So it's rerun several times. We've chatted during the pandemic online, and I thought, what better way to end the year than to have Tara and James again live from their living room in the fabulous Berkshires to recap the year and to spread a little holiday cheer. It's so good to see both of you.
Yeah, you too, Mark.
Great to see you, Mark.
Yeah, good morning. I got to see both of you at the Berkshire Theater Critics Awards, and incidentally, WSKB and Westfield Community Programming got permission from Pittsfield Community Television to air them. They'll be airing in rotation here, so you get to watch them. But James Barry was an award winner this year. Congratulations on that. And Terry, you were a nominee, so congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So I know that you're not performing during the holiday week, but how's the cookie business, Tara?
It's booming right now. It's a little nuts. I'm really underneath this facade. I'm covered with flour. It's just, this is all like, this is my mask. It's been good. It's been really, really busy. So it's I'm trying to find a balance. So it's a crazy year.
Yeah, good. You guys were able to bounce back from the pandemic and immediately immerse yourselves in acting and directing and teaching. And I know, James, you used the time during the pandemic to go back to school and work on a playwriting degree. And Tara, you've been teaching at Smith and took a position at Chester Theater. First, I want to ask you about Chester. How difficult was it to move your shows for the summer of 2021 all the way out to Hancock Shaker Village?
There were a lot of unknowns, and I think that was the scariest thing for us because, for 30 years, we had sort of been in the same place. We knew our space, we knew our lighting grid, we knew our sound system, we had everything in place. So this was a big learning curve for us, just because it was a completely different setup. And we were, dealing with the elements and dealing with weddings. So we would have to strike a set when, in the middle of a run, which doesn't happen at the town hall in Chester. But I have to say, overall, I feel like it was extremely positive. We had such a great relationship with Hancock Shaker Village. They were so welcoming. Their staff, their leadership was completely on the same page with us about COVID restrictions, COVID, all of that stuff. So they made that part really easy. For us, having to cut back to 3 shows was a little scary, but in the same sense, we sold out most of our performances, which was pretty incredible. And we got to get people from New York State. We got to get people from sort of more Eastern New York, Western Mass. And that was kind of cool because I think people, in the Albany area, even the Pittsfield area, didn't know that Chester even existed. So hopefully we have a new audience members that will join us this summer. And I'm actually going to miss a little bit. I'm going to miss the village. I just love the atmosphere there. Like when you weren't performing and you were waiting around or just walking there and,
the cows were very supportive. Yeah.
I was going to say that a night that I went to see James in Title Indeed, for those people that didn't see it, it was a solo performance. And the night that we went, one cow was extremely interested in what was going on and was mooing along. And you played opposite that cow much better than Caroline played opposite her cow in Gypsy. I mean, that was the cow was just so into the show. Was it like that every night?
You could say that. Yeah, we may have had, there was an interesting balance of some intentional sound design trickery and unpredictable elements of the fauna in the region that came into play in different ways at each different performance.
The other thing I found amazing was there were a bunch of cats that I think live on the grounds at Hancock Shaker Village, and they'd be wandering around during the performance, and you'd see them scurry back and forth. And so, I mean, it was really theater outside that with all the unexpected things. The only thing that ever equaled it in any way was there was a Cat on a Hot Tin Roof opening night at Berkshire Theater Group when a bat joined the cast on stage, and they ended up stopping the show and removing the bat and then going back. But it was the kind of those quirks in nature that made going to the theater fun.
Yeah, the unpredictability of each show was exciting. I mean, there's adrenaline anyway, and then you sort of layer that on top of it. Like, is the cat going to join us tonight on the couch? Or, will it be thunder and lightning? Will people be shooting at the target range? So yeah, it was just like, we just never knew. It kept it, we were tired by the end, though. It was a lot, we had 4 interns who ended up doing everything.
They were amazing.
I mean, they were amazing, but box office was completely different. We didn't have paper tickets. Everything was, either just sort of like, show up, we have your name, but it was really fun to kind of mix it up a little bit. And it really it was a really wonderful way to come back from a year of no theater. And I think our audiences were just so grateful. I think they were grateful for everywhere that was producing last summer. But we have a particularly wonderful support group from our audience. And I think the one thing that I'm looking forward to getting back to when we're in our space in Chester are those cast conversations, are the panels, are the talkbacks. We just weren't able to do as many of those. And that's sort of what that's kind of what we're known for in terms of, outside of the performances, what are we offering? And I think that that's a great thing that the audience loves. I think our casts are, and Daniel definitely loves to do those. So yeah, I think out of everything, that's what I missed the most, but we got to have a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun.
Blast.
Yeah, I know we've talked before in other programs of what it was like as a theater person not being able to attend a live performance and missing the interaction between audience and actor. And we talked about streaming and all that. When you return to the stage for the first time this past summer, what was it like performing for a live audience? I mean, did you feel a different vibe than you had felt doing shows prior to the pandemic?
Well, I certainly wasn't taking a single second of it for granted. So, I hope I never did in the past, but I was especially in tune with, I was just filled with gratitude the whole time. And I think that the audience was, just like you said, Mark, they'd been missing the experience of live theater too. I have to say it was really strange to make my return after 2 years to the stage in a solo play where I had no partners on stage. But I had a wonderful artistic sparring partner in Kira Naughton, who I had a blast with. She directed Title Indeed, and we had a wonderful rehearsal process together. So I wasn't all alone, in a bubble. And Leslie Sears, our stage manager, and the whole intern staff, I mean, everybody was wonderful, and we definitely felt like a crew. But yes, to be direct addressing in a solo show an audience who hadn't been to the theater in 2 years was a trip. And you can tell instantly if someone is inviting this type of interaction or is terrified of it. So
Yeah.
It was a funny balancing act to negotiate as the run went on. I think I got better at making it better for the audience.
Had you ever done a solo show before?
Never. That was my first, and
your spouse didn't warn you about the trials and tribulations of a solo show, because Tara, you did one the year before.
I learned from the best. I had the best advice.
Yeah, it was I think we helped each other with lines, which was great. James had helped me.
Formidable.
And yeah, but I mean, you really do need to have that partner to kind of bounce things off of, outside of rehearsal. You're trying to learn. The thing James did, which I didn't do, was he went over the show every day in its entirety, either in our front yard, or he would get to Hancock Shaker Village early and like go and rehearse the entire play. I probably should have done that. I never did. So that was an extra little step that he took, which I think just probably made you a little bit more at ease. Well, there was just so many things that were distractions for him in the play. I mean, not in the play, in the space, that I didn't have to deal with,
I'll say not to compare our experiences at all though, but I mean, I don't know if I could have lived in my show as much, the subject matter you had to embrace and discuss and divulge night after night. I don't know if I would have gone through it once or twice a day, every day, if I didn't have to,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but you each have different challenges coming to the stage. Like Tara doing the show this year with Tiny Beautiful Things. Here you are returning to the stage after a pandemic, even though you did Row on screen for Wham, but you're returning to the stage as not only as an actor, but as an administrator of a small theater company with other responsibilities. So you don't have the luxury that James might have had of just going into rehearsal and really developing a part and performing, but you were still worrying about interns and all the administrative stuff that you have to do. So that must have been a challenge to come back.
Yeah, that was, what was nice was I had the whole summer to kind of get used to the space and how things ran. I'm really glad I wasn't doing the first show and trying to, negotiate everything. So by the time we were up and running, or even we were in rehearsal, I felt like everybody kind of had a pretty good grasp. And so I was able to balance my administrative duties with my artistic duties much easier than I think I would have if the show had been in the beginning of the season.
How did it feel for you stepping on stage and feeling the audience after 2 years?
I remember I think it was maybe our first dress, or even in tech, because we hadn't been we had just been rehearsing in our normal rehearsal space. So I remember we get up there, and I think I said to one of our, maybe it was Tavon, I said, I don't even remember what to do. It was really weird. I was like, how do we do this? I feel so strange. And of course that goes away, but it was just that, and of course I had direct address to the audience too. So it wasn't like I could kind of, wrap myself in a bubble with my cast and just, I had to really like engage people right away. And so I was like, oh my God, how do I do this? And you get so in your head, you're like, I'm talking to people now. And instead of, like thinking about your lines. So it was a real mind mess up, in the beginning. And then it was just like, oh, I remember this. This is great.
Yeah, that opening night felt like getting shot out of a cannon. It was it was great though.
But it was a great feeling. It was like, oh, this is why we do this. And I love having moments like that. I tell my students, and I actually was like having a great class yesterday, and I said to them, something happened in class where everything just sort of gelled and we were all in this really wonderful zone. And I was like, man, that's why we do this, right? It's like pure, it's like, I don't even know how to explain it, but it's storytelling at its best. It's not just a great story, but it's how we are connected to our audience, connected to each other, and like sharing that sense of humanity with each other. And there's nothing like that. And I love to bake, and but I don't get that. I don't get that feeling when I like take out a tray of cookies. So it was a really exciting thing to return to.
Yeah, and despite the unfortunate lack of the talkbacks and the conversations, I have to say it was so touching after every performance, whether it was Title Indeed or Tiny Beautiful Things, and I can only assume this happened with the Niceties as well, which was brilliant. On my way to the car after the show, just the people who would stop and make a point of, divulging how personally affected or connected they felt to the show and its themes. And, I had some truly interesting conversations with people in the parking lot. It was amazing to just be reminded of how vital it is, what we're doing. And it was really special.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful.
We're going to take a quick break to acknowledge our underwriters, and we'll be back to chat more with Tara Franklin and James Barry as we wrap up 2021. And if you've missed a part of this program or you want to share it with your friends, it's archived on YouTube at WSKB Community Radio. You're listening to Artsbeat. Peter Coles is our chief engineer. I'm your host, Mark Auerbach, and we'll return in just a moment.
Underwriting is brought to you by Boise Cascade Distribution, providing products and services needed for building material dealers, home improvement centers, and industrial customers. They offer everything from engineered wood and plywood to Drex decking and railing, James Hardie siding, and Advantech subfloor. Located at 33 Fowler Street Extension in Westfield and on the web at bc.com. They are committed to providing quality products, great service, convenience, and value.
Underwriting for Community Radio on WSKB is brought to you in part by Rockies. Over 30 convenient locations throughout Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Connecticut, and Florida. One of the nation's largest ACE dealers. Expertise and great product selection in paint, hardware, lawn and garden. That's Rockies. Rock solid service since 1926. On the web at rockies.com.
Hi, it's Bob Plass, and I have Wow, It's Tuesday, every Tuesday, 6 to 8. Wow, it's Tuesday.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB.
I did it!
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Artsbeat. I'm Mark Auerbach. We're spending a half an hour with my pals, Tara Franklin and James Barry. They're actors, directors, teachers. James is a playwright. They're musicians. Tara bakes. And we're wrapping up 2021. I've got to say that having the chance to see both of you on stage after 2 years of not seeing theater was a treat, but getting to see both of you in person at the Berkshire Theater Critics Awards, I realized that in the 2 years that this pandemic impacted our lives, that the one thing that makes theater really great, and the reason you guys go to work every day and I go to work every day, it's a community. And we're all like family in some way, brothers and sisters, and it was seeing the people that you care about perform and direct and everything after 2 years of not having that opportunity. I will never take theater going or the people that make theater happen for granted again. So I've got to say that this year, having the chance to see both of you work and getting a chance to just chill in person has been such a treat.
Yeah.
So in terms of the new year, James, I know you're just about to finish a degree in playwriting. How many plays have you written while you've been taking this course?
Well, several short plays. I got to have my first live reading at Smith of a few short things a few weeks ago, which was really exciting. And I'm in the middle of working on a full length for my thesis. So I don't know. I probably have maybe 5 or 6 short one acts that I would be willing to share with people. Though I've filled wastebaskets with many more, or digital wastebaskets anyway.
Yeah. Is playwriting something, now that you've been at it for a while, is this something that you want to pursue, or is it just enhancing the other work that you do?
Well, it's certainly enhancing everything else, and the way I think about theater overall from page to stage, as they say. So, but yeah, I have no intention of stopping any of my theatrical pursuits. I enjoy it all.
And what about you, Tara? You've made this kind of switch a little bit from just acting and doing some teaching. Now you're acting, administering, and teaching. Where do you see the next year taking you?
That is a great question. I think, I know where we'll be for the first 6 months of next year. I will be putting together, or hopefully already having put together, a season at Chester with Daniel, getting my intern group together. I'm teaching 2 classes for Smith next semester. I'm teaching just my acting one, and then I'm doing a comedy improv class, which will be really fun. And then, we'll be doing a season next summer. After that, we're not sure. James has been applying to various positions in the New England area, in the Northeast. We definitely want to stay, I would love to stay in New England. We're really not interested in going much further, just because both of our families are here. But we don't know. I think, my job continues to change at Smith, just depending on what they need in terms of performance faculty. So I'm pretty sure next year I have, I'm going to be teaching a class per semester, and then possibly directing. And hopefully I can stick it out and stay with whatever I'm still doing. I'm loving all of it. I love my position at Chester when I'm an actor and when I am, on the other side. I do love teaching. But the baking business is also becoming a little bit bigger than I anticipated. So,
but 20 feet that way, there are just hundreds of piles of cookies. It's unbelievable. She's been at it since 7 o'clock this morning.
Yeah. Well, I got to say, not to plug Sweet Sam Bakes, but it is the best cookie company I've ever. And believe me, when I have a box of those lavender shortbread cookies, I can get anybody in my household to do anything. Here's a cookie, take out the trash. Here's a cookie, do the dishes.
I should try that here.
Yeah, it seems to work. Tara, as you guys are planning Chester, if things are going as they are right now, do you think that you'll be able to return to an indoor season at Chester next summer?
Absolutely. We are already working with the town hall in terms of, just upgrading ventilation systems, just things that the equity union is going to require of us. So yes, we are planning on being back at the town hall, and I think the town really missed having us there last summer. It's a really great thing for that community. It's a small town. There's not a whole lot happening outside of the summer in terms of, there's a couple restaurants that stay open all year, but the theater season for them is just it's a great boon for them in terms of, just culture and actually just bringing business into the town. So that was an unfortunate thing last year. That's what we really felt. We felt like even though we loved being at Hancock, we said, we got to get back to where the community is expecting us. And, and we love to be part of that community. So yeah, fingers crossed and hope everything goes well. But we've had every intention of being back in there, and hopefully we can sort of stay on that course.
Yeah, and one would hope that the people that saw Chester Theater for the first time, because it was in Hancock, will make the journey to Chester. And for me, I'd much rather drive to Chester, which is 40 minutes closer than going to Hancock Shaker Village.
Yeah, we were the only ones that really liked the switch in terms of the commute, because actually ours got shorter.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, it was a great place to go to the theater, and I kept saying to Rob, we should go there one day and during the day and just see it. Maybe hit the gift shop and buy a piece of furniture or something. But it's a fascinating little place. But I got real tired of the Mass Pike this summer, driving back and forth every day.
Yeah, you're not alone. You're not alone.
So I'm ready for Chester.
Yeah.
How many years will it be before they program a James Barry play at Chester?
I don't know.
I'll have to write the right thing.
We it was really fun because James did that reading a few weeks ago, and one of the sections was sort of the first and second act, maybe. Of your full-length play.
Excerpts from what I'm working on. Yeah.
And Daniel and I both were there and just kind of like enjoying the evening so much. And I'm thinking, this is something we could do. We are doing a play that we commissioned from a playwright, Darcy Parker Bruce. And they are, working on the finishing up the play. We're really hoping that we can find the right cast for that. But that is going to happen this summer. So we do have a world premiere of a play, which is exciting. And then we're sort of trying to build the season around that.
Yeah, Daniel had been on this show and had said that Chester had commissioned the play, but it just couldn't be done because of the shift to Chester, to Hancock Shaker Village. So it's good that opportunity will happen.
Yeah. And it's actually given Darcy just that extra amount of time to kind of, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a playwright, so it always amazes me when they had this wonderful script and we did a reading of it and had 5 people in it. And then, they completely still some of the same concepts, but completely different script. And it was just, it was amazing. And it was still what we wanted, but it was just in a different form. And so, we realized though last summer it was not the right time or space for what the play is dealing with. So I think being inside, being in our, in our home again feels more right for it.
Before we go, because we're out of time, and I have to have you guys back. We'll have to redo the Valentine's Day special of 2020 and do it in 2022. But we talked about the cookies a little bit, and you might as well tell people how they can find Sweet Sam Bakes cookies.
Okay, so I have an Etsy shop. So it's etsy.com/shop/Sweet Sam Bakes. And I'm taking orders through the 14th. And then after that, it's not going to get there before Christmas.
Well, this show is actually running on New Year's Eve. So you'll be starting your 2022 cookie selection, right?
So I'm excited this coming year, that we will have Valentine's Day, like packages and samplers and cookies. So that's going to be new. Since I've gone full year, the options have grown. It's not just Christmas anymore. So
and if James Barry is in the kitchen helping to make the cookies, those are more expensive, right?
Oh yeah. He's expensive. I have to pay him so much money.
I've been relegated to stickering bags.
Well, if you're smart, James, you'll write a play for Tara Franklin, and then it'll go to Hollywood and all that, and you won't have to put stickers on bags anymore.
That would be smart.
Yeah.
Anyway, folks, we're out of time. We've been chatting with James Barry and Tara Franklin, actors, directors, playwrights, cookie bakers, and my good friends. And what a better way to end 2021 and move ahead to 2022. Thanks for being here today, James and Tara.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. Much love.
And that wraps up Artsbeat for 2021. Thanks for joining us. Peter Coles has been our chief engineer. We'll see you next week in 2022 with another edition of Artsbeat.
Moving in like this, a little bit closer. You and me can va mi corazón. Y haremos el amor hasta que te vuelvas loco, loco, loco. Dance a little bit closer. Move it in like this, a little bit closer. You and me, what ecstasy. Ooh, come a little bit closer. Slide your feet like this, a little bit closer. You and me can dance so free. Y oye cómo va mi corazón.